How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors? Grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill, turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here, add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
The Korean wave is drawing more fans from all over the world. Local consumer prices continue to hover at the 2% since rate in April. Turning to robots to allow the visually impaired the chance to better indulge in cultural experiences. Like the number of hybrid cars are registered in South Korea has surpassed 2 million with this locally developed Yuri rocket.
Arirang.
In our headlines on this Wednesday, August 27th, here in South Korea. President Xi Jinping travels to Hanwha Philly Shipyard to commemorate the commencement of a new chapter of partnership between South Korea and the U.S. in the shipbuilding industry. Meanwhile, over in the southern port city of Busan, Prime Minister Kim Min-seok addresses the audience at the World Climate Industry Expo, affirming South Korea's commitment to sustainable energy solutions. And on the entertainment front, KPop Demon Hunters now stands as the most watched movie ever on Netflix, with a total of 236 million views, surpassing Red Notice, released back in 2021. We start yet again in the U.S. as President Xi Jinping made his way to Philadelphia to usher in a fresh chapter of cooperation in the shipbuilding industry. Our presidential office correspondent Song Yu-jin files this report.
This is the State of Maine, a $300 million vessel ordered by the U.S. Maritime Administration and built at the Hanwha Philly Shipyard in Philadelphia. President Xi Jinping traveled from Washington, D.C. to attend Tuesday's naming ceremony, underscoring his push to expand South Korea-U.S. shipbuilding cooperation, a key focus of his summit with President Donald Trump at the White House the day before.
미국 조선업과 대한민국 조선업이 함께 도약하는 윈윈의 성과를 만들어낼 것이고, 오늘의 새로운 출항은 한미 양국이 단단한 우정으로 써내려가는 또 하나의 희망과 도전의 역사로 기록될 것입니다.
The state of Maine is a prime example of the Make American Shipbuilding Great Again project, combining Korean design and equipment with U.S. facilities and workers. This national security multi-mission vessel will serve as a training ship for American maritime academies and conduct rescue missions during emergencies. Its birthplace, the Hanwha Philly Shipyard, was acquired by Korea's Hanwha Group last December and has become the symbol of this bilateral partnership.
최첨단 선박 기술을 보여주는 미국 최고의 조선소로 거듭날 것이고, 미국 해안벨트 곳곳에서 조선업이 다시 살아날 것입니다. 72년 역사의 한미 동맹은 안보 동맹, 경제 동맹, 기술 동맹이 합쳐진 미래형 포괄적 전략 동맹의 새 장을 열게 될 것입니다.
Together with our partners in the United States and following both President Trump's and President Lee's vision to revitalize the maritime industry, we look forward to new investments, new opportunities, and to playing a central role in making American shipbuilding great again.
Following the ceremony, President Lee toured the yard where he asked U.S. officials to ensure smooth operations for Korean shipmakers doing business in America. So with this, President Lee has wrapped up his busy three-day visit to the U.S. Korea's Air Force One jet will return home early on Thursday. 송유진, Arirang News, Philadelphia.
Now, prior to his address at the Hanwha Philly Shipyard, President Xi Jinping was at the Arlington National Cemetery to pay tribute to the selfless sacrifices of soldiers there. Arirang's Yoon Jung-min has more.
President Lee Jae-myung began the final day of his U.S. trip by visiting the Arlington National Cemetery near Washington. A 21-gun salute was fired from near the cemetery. The president laid a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier with his name on it. He was accompanied by First Lady Kim Hae-kyung, Foreign Minister Cho Hyun, and the U.S. Chief of Protocol, Monica Crowley. The cemetery is where thousands of U.S. service members are laid to rest. Later in the day, he and the First Lady traveled to Philadelphia and visited the Philip Jason Memorial House to honor a Korean independence activist. Lee said he hoped the Memorial House would continue its role and inform future generations of the history of Korea's independence movement, while contributing to the local community. Also known as Seo Jae-pil, Philip Jason was not only an activist, but a doctor, journalist, and the first Korean to gain citizenship in the U.S. It's the first time in 26 years that a South Korean president has visited the Memorial House. As the president concludes his week-long overseas trip, his message was evident for those who sacrifice themselves to save and defend the country. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News, Washington, D.C.
Staying in the U.S., President Donald Trump claims Seoul and Washington have, quote, a done deal with regard to tariffs and trade, despite, quote, some of the problems South Korea had. Our Lee Seung-jae covers his remarks.
A day after he held summit talks with South Korean President Lee Jae-myung in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump said Tuesday that Seoul has honored its trade agreement with Washington, despite what he described as a problem that South Korea had.
I heard there was a problem with South Korea, but we met yesterday and they're done. We didn't do anything. We just kept the same deal. He honored the deal they wanted.
Speaking at a cabinet meeting, Trump highlighted a series of trade agreements his administration has reached to reduce America's trade deficits and increase federal revenue. He also noted that Seoul wanted to see if they could do something, but stuck to the agreement in the end. President Trump did not elaborate on the problems surrounding the deal. Meanwhile, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick highlighted Trump's success through his trade policies. Lutnick announced that South Korea and Japan will be making massive investments in the U.S., totaling $900 billion US.
Japan and Korea, they're never going to open their markets to us. So we've negotiated $900 billion that they're giving you to invest in national and economic security in America.
According to Lutnick, South Korea has agreed to invest $350 billion, while Japan will contribute $550 billion. In exchange, Washington will lower certain tariffs. The secretary said the funds will be pooled into a new National Economic Security Fund, which the administration intends to use for major infrastructure development projects. He praised the deals as a clear example of how tariffs are delivering results for the American economy. Still, questions remain. While Japan's investment plan is expected to be announced later this week, details of South Korea's $350 billion commitment have yet to be outlined. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
In other news, North Korea has denounced President Lee Jae-myung, dismissing his demand for denuclearization as, quote, delusional. The denunciation earlier on this Wednesday follows remarks by the South Korean and U.S. leaders at the White House on Monday local time regarding nuclear disarmament on the Korean peninsula for peace and prosperity. In a statement carried by its state-run media, Pyongyang rejected any such reality, reaffirming its commitment to its nuclear weapons ambitions for its security. Chinese President Xi Jinping is expected to attend the APEC meeting in South Korea's Gyeongju this autumn. Now, this is according to the South Korean delegation dispatched by President Lee Jae-myung to Beijing. The four-member team, led by former National Assembly Speaker Park Byung-seok, said Seoul's request for the Chinese leader's presence at the planned multinational economic gathering was well relayed and that it was likely that he would participate in the APEC leaders' meeting. Separately, with regard to Beijing's unofficial ban on South Korean cultural content, Park claimed time was needed to iron out differences. The southern port city of Busan is playing host to a series of energy-related forums this week, and Prime Minister Kim Min-seok took to the podium at one of the main events to affirm South Korea's commitment to sustainable green initiatives. Our Kim Do-yeon has details.
The World Climate Industry Expo, a key 2025 Energy Super Week event, kicked off on Wednesday, drawing together global leaders and top companies to tackle the world's pressing climate challenges. In his opening address, Prime Minister Kim Min-seok announced South Korea's ambition to lead the global green transition by developing infrastructure like energy highways.
The new South Korean government has launched a national energy transition project. We are leading the way by building energy highways, expanding our power grid, and shifting our focus to renewables. Through these efforts, we will achieve carbon neutrality, strengthen our energy security, and drive economic growth all at the same time.
The opening ceremony saw government representatives from 32 countries, as well as top executives from tech and energy giants like Google, Microsoft, Siemens, and Hyundai Motor. And in front of the crowd, the Prime Minister also highlighted the Expo's central theme, the critical link between the energy sector and artificial intelligence.
This Expo's theme is AI for energy and energy for AI. Developing artificial intelligence requires a stable energy supply, and in turn, AI technology is essential for energy innovation. This fusion of energy and AI will be the breakthrough we need to overcome the climate and energy crisis.
But the Expo is just one part of the Super Week in Busan. Happening in parallel is the 15th APEC Energy Ministerial Meeting, where top energy officials from the 21 member economies are gathered. For the next 2 days, they will be tackling critical issues like strengthening energy security, modernizing power grids, and finding stable energy solutions to power the world's growing demand from data centers. Officials say these ministerial talks are a crucial stepping stone, with South Korea's energy minister calling them a strong bridge that will help set the agenda for the main APEC Leaders Summit this October. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
On the cultural front, K-pop Demon Hunters now stands as the most watched movie ever on Netflix. On Wednesday, Netflix announced that its original animation has hit a total of 236 million views, surpassing Red Notice, released back in 2021, to claim the #1 spot. Now, when compared to TV drama series, the film ranks third, following Squid Game Season 1 and Wednesday Season 1 in that order. Meanwhile, the Seoul Metropolitan Dance Theatre's fusion of the past and present on stage has prompted rave reviews. Our Pyongyang has a glimpse.
Dancers in perfect unison, creating geometric shapes that expand, contract, vanish, then reappear. Ilmu, meaning one dance, is a modern take on the ancestral rites once performed for Joseon Dynasty kings and queens at Jongmyo Shrine. It's presented by the Seoul Metropolitan Dance Theatre, reimagining Jongmyo Jaereak, a UNESCO intangible cultural heritage.
It's a piece built on the idea of setting aside the individual, placing oneself within order, and joining a unified dance with the hope that everything will come together in harmony.
This year marks its 4th run, following 3 successful seasons and sold-out shows at New York's Lincoln Center in 2023. The performance opens with the traditional ilmu dance, shifts into contemporary dance, and concludes with a modern fusion that blends the two. What never changes are the principles of unison and multiplication. Dancers move together like a single breathing organism.
Even though our dancers are from different age groups, we move and even breathe together. What seems simple on stage actually takes a lot of work and focus. So I hope the audience can feel the effort and energy we put into that harmony.
Every movement, down to the angle of the fingers, is intentional, as is the use of silence. At times, the only sounds are the slight rustle of fabric and the dancer's near-silent footsteps. The stage design is deliberately minimal, creating contrast with bold costumes inspired by 오방색, the 5 traditional colors of Korea. The beauty of emptiness and restraint is also what director Chung Gu wanted to highlight in the performance.
The stage often opens up a white space at the center as props and dancers gather, scatter, empty out, and regroup. We explored choreography that reflects this constant flow, pursuing the beauty of emptiness. The stage itself was also designed to highlight that sense of space.
The 4-day run in Seoul ended with every seat sold out. Next, one dance will travel to Gangneung City and Daegu City to share its vision of tradition and modernity. Pyongyang, Arirang News.
Also on public display here in Seoul are the works of young aspiring Asian artists as they seek a firm foothold in the world of art. Our An Sung-jin spoke to a few of them.
Hidden artistic talent is now in the spotlight. Here at the 2025 Asian Students and Young Artists Art Festival, more than 500 artists have put up their work. Celebrating its 18th anniversary this year, ASYAAF is Asia's largest festival for young artists. It features contributions from across Asia, including Taiwan, Singapore, and Japan. With more than 1,000 artworks, this exhibition provides a glimpse into the creativity and dedication of these young artists.
I first got to know about this exhibition when I was in college, and back then, I thought one day, I will also showcase my artwork. This is my first ever exhibition, so I've put a lot of effort into it.
For a lot of young new artists, ASYAAF is a stepping stone to a bigger stage to showcase their artwork to the public.
Until now, I've only submitted work as a group, but I wanted to experience the larger world, so I ended up participating in this art fair with the dream of becoming an artist. Still a bit nervous, but I'm so happy that I can display my own work in a space like this.
And it's the vibrant energy and passion that attracts visitors to the exhibition every year.
I'm coming here almost every year with my friend, and I like how I can see a variety of young artists and their artwork.
I started coming here after my friend introduced me. Since these artists are young, I think I get a lot of energy from them, and it's also refreshing to see them.
This year's ASYAAF is being hosted at Culture Station Seoul 284, the former Seoul Station building, which celebrates its 100th anniversary. The exhibition is divided into 8 different concepts such as departure and arrival, destination and transit, and other themes linked to train travel.
For a lot of these young artists, they're just starting their career. And I think ASYAAF acts as a gateway for these artists. We get attention for nurturing these artists who come out to continue great work.
The exhibition runs until September 7th and not only gives visitors a chance to appreciate the artwork, but also interact with these rising stars of the art world. So why not go and check it out? An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Come next year, that is 2026, South Korea and Greece will mark 65 years of diplomatic relations. Now, in light of this occasion, the latter's tourism minister was here in Seoul to advance bilateral cultural exchanges. Our Park Gonu sat down with her.
a popular travel destination welcoming around 40 million people annually, 4 times its population.
Tourism is one of the most important sectors of the Greek economy. It's not just an economic activity, it's also a way to bring people together.
Koreans are also drawn to Greece, with sites featured in popular TV shows, including Descendants of the Sun and Grandpa's Over Flowers. In fact, the number of Korean tourists was up by 20% last year compared to 2019. And the minister hinted at further collaboration opportunities.
K-culture is in any case right now very popular around the world. There has been a new organization within the Greek government to support film production with the financial incentives for the production. We have a very good framework within which we could work together.
She also spoke about other potential collaborations.
Collaborating with museums in Greece and in a way having a dialogue between the two civilizations, not just exhibitions but cultural exchanges, cultural dialogue. Korea is probably right now has achieved the best way to penetrate especially the younger generations. I would like to see younger generation, younger artists collaborating.
She even gave recommendations for themes and filming sites based on Greek culture.
Greek mythology is very popular around here, that you even learn about Greek mythology in schools. All these places that you read mythology, they actually exist. At the same time, we are a very modern country, so you can enjoy the gastronomy, you can enjoy the nightlife in the vibrant cities.
Saying the tourism future is based on sustainability, the minister said the country focuses on qualitative growth instead of just the sheer number of visitors. And with that in mind, more efforts are being put in along the way while strengthening diplomatic relations between Korea and Greece.
So the 65th anniversary of diplomatic relations, as you mentioned, between Korea and Greece is coming up. So what significance does this milestone hold, and how do you envision the future of the partnership?
Back to the times that Greeks fought in the Korean War. It's a history that we remember, you remember, and it's also important to give the messages for the future that our freedom and our democracy were not always a given. In this respect, we share common values.
She called the anniversary a good starting point, adding that ties will strengthen in tourism, with a potential MOU expected in early 2026. 박건우, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. In the United States, President Donald Trump said he's prepared to hit Russia with severe economic sanctions if President Vladimir Putin does not agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine. On Tuesday, President Trump stated at a White House cabinet meeting, "We want to have an end. We have economic sanctions. I'm talking about economic because we're not going to get into a world war." He warned that failing to secure a ceasefire would result in economic consequences for Russia, but with no risk of war. While such measures were delayed previously in hopes of brokering a deal between Russia and Ukraine, Moscow's lack of movement has now prompted the possibility of very serious sanctions. Australia has made a rare decision to expel Iran's ambassador after accusing Iran of organizing 2 anti-Semitic arson attacks in the country. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese stated on Tuesday that substantial evidence has been gathered indicating that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps used proxy networks to coordinate 2 firebombing attacks in Australia. One attack occurred at a synagogue in Melbourne in December, and the other targeted a kosher cafe in Sydney. Australian intelligence has confirmed that encrypted transfers and links to organized crime were aimed at concealing Iran's involvement in these incidents. In response, Australia has officially designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization, suspended operations at its embassy in Tehran, and recalled its diplomats from Iran. Additionally, Iran's ambassador and 3 other officials have been given 7 days to leave Australia. It is the first time Australia has expelled an ambassador since World War II. Meanwhile, Iran's foreign ministry has strongly rejected the accusations, and Jewish community leaders have expressed relief at the Australian government's actions. France has returned 3 colonial-era human skulls to Madagascar during a ceremony held at the French Ministry of Culture in Paris on Tuesday. One of the skulls is believed to belong to King Tuera, a 19th century Malagasy monarch who ruled over the Sakalava people and was killed by French troops in 1897. The other 2 skulls are from the same ethnic group. French Culture Minister Rachida Dati described the handover as a historic step toward reconciliation, while Madagascar's Culture Minister Volamiranti Donamara called it a profoundly meaningful event for the Sakalava community. American pop superstar Taylor Swift announced her engagement to NFL star Travis Kelce on Tuesday, sharing a joint post on social media featuring photos of their floral proposal. The post's caption, which earned more than 20 million likes, read, "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married." Swift and Kelce, both 35, have been dating for 2 years since 2023 after Swift performed at Arrowhead Stadium, home of Kelce's Kansas City Chiefs. President Donald Trump congratulated the couple, saying, "I wish them a lot of luck." 최지희, 아리랑 뉴스.
The heat is still around 33 degrees Celsius across the country today. In Seoul, a heat wave warning was issued again. Due to the influence of the easterly winds, the temperature rose to 34 degrees in Seoul. It must be hotter because it is about 2 degrees higher than yesterday. This humid heat will continue for the rest of the week. In addition, UV rays are also very strong nationwide. They'll rise up to high to very high levels across the country around noon to 3 in the afternoon when the sun shines strongly. Tomorrow, Seoul and Busan will start off at 25 degrees, Gyeongju at 23 degrees. Daily highs will up to 32 degrees in Seoul, Chuncheon and Gwangju, Busan, Gyeongju 31 degrees. It is expected to rain again in the Seoul metropolitan area and western parts of Gangwon-do province on Friday. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.
To be only be an animal, let it flow. I don't need a reason, 눈치 없지. 너에게로 빠져.
인식 시작합니다.
헤이 미러, 오늘의 운동 루틴 시작해줘.
네, 오늘의 운동 루틴을 시작하겠습니다. 레디, 고! 좀 더 앉아 보아요. 4, 3, 2, 1. 고생했어요.
We move. Annually, we invest more than 10% of our total revenues in research and development and 15% in the R&D workforce. Main products, pneumatic cylinders, solenoid valves, hydraulic cylinders, air preparation units, and grippers, and all other products are manufactured through systematic management. KCC Precision.
We are a well-known company in the field of road safety facility manufacturing. We operate the factory nationwide in Korea to go beyond the demanding safety standards of the ages. We are a global network, local, worldwide, the global small and strong company appointed by Korean government. We are KSI.
During the press availability session at the White House earlier on Monday local time, the South Korean and American leaders appeared united in their cause for nuclear disarmament on the Korean peninsula and for dialogue with North Korea's Kim Jong-un.
Hello and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Press Perspective. It's August 27th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. The first summit between Seoul and Washington under the Xi and Trump administrations took place at the White House in the afternoon on Monday local time, which was in the very early hours of Tuesday here in South Korea. Now today we continue our panel session on those talks and more. For this, I have Stephen Borwick with Japanese weekly news magazine Nikkei Asia here in the studio. Stephen, welcome back.
Nice to be here.
I also have Professor Park Won-gon at Ewha Women's University joining our session virtually. Professor Park, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
Right, Stephen, we will start here. So generally speaking, is the foreign media lauding or lamenting perhaps President Lee Jae-myung's diplomatic maneuvers, if you will, at the Oval Office? What has been the response thus far, Stephen?
I think if you were to read through the foreign media coverage, you'd probably get the impression that things went pretty well. A lot of foreign media coverage has focused on the apparently chummy interchanges between Lee and Trump. Like, they seem to get along pretty well. They seem to be kind of joking back and forth. And that was not entirely surprising. I think like a number of people have speculated that Trump and Lee have certain things in common. They're both kind of political outsiders. They both had, you know, rocky but ultimately successful careers. And Lee is, I think, pretty well known as he's used the word pragmatist a lot since he came into power, wanting to put South Korea's national interest first and foremost, and wanting to not approach international exchanges through the lens of any particular ideology, but kind of try to get along with everybody in every possible scenario and just kind of do what's best for the country. And so another thing that I think an observer of the foreign media coverage would come away was that Lee he seems to have like kind of prepared a kind of pitch, a kind of, you know, he seemed to have gone in there with like a specific strategy in mind, where like he had prepared some gifts, and they were talking about golf and a number of other things, where it seemed as though they had a particularly good chemistry, even though the fact that I think they don't really share a common language. I don't think Lee's English is perfectly fluent, and Trump certainly doesn't speak Korean, but they didn't let that stop them from engaging with each other. I think Lee even felt comfortable enough that he was able to kind of joke about having been a bit nervous about a possible Zelensky moment. You know, he was nervous about the potential chance that he could suffer a fate similar to what Ukrainian leader Zelensky went through when he was in the White House and kind of got faced a barrage of questions that were not entirely cordial in tone and kind of had to defend himself. Lee kind of seemed to have, one thing I keep telling foreign observers of Korea is that, you know, Lee Jae-myung is not a rookie when it comes to being a public figure. He's been in the public eye for a very long time. Before he became president, he held pretty high-profile political office as the governor of Gyeonggi province and the mayor of a satellite city called Sangnam. And in those posts, he was really quite good. He had very good approval ratings when he was in those positions because he was quite good at engaging with his constituents and trying to give people what they wanted, trying to address the needs of whatever was happening in those communities. He's now leading an entire country, which is a much more challenging endeavor, but he seems to be applying the same kinds of strategies. And just to say one more thing about his meeting in the U.S., I would just say that it's important to note that he didn't come away with a kind of massive victory when it comes to things like trade or some of the other, kind of more thorny issues. But I think the expectations, factoring in the expectations of this meeting, that it was their first and there was, some kind of tensions leading up to it. I think the general assessment is that it went pretty well, but I would just flag that there's a lot more work to be done still.
Right. Keeping in mind then what Stephen has just said, Professor Park, speaking as a scholar, how would you evaluate this first exchange between the two leaders?
Well, I have a very similar feeling as just Steve mentioned, even though I'm the scholar, but the summit to me is like a roller coaster. So 3 hours before the meeting, President Trump posted on the social media and he was talking of the purge or revolution. And those messages sent tension through the roof. So in the end, the summit avoided the worst scenario, as just Steve mentioned, like they remind me about the President Trump and President Zelensky back in February. At the same time, it was the very first meeting between President Xi and President Trump, and it took place in the friendly atmosphere, as just Stevens correctly described. There was a very clear personal chemistry between these two leaders. And that matters because when President Trump runs foreign policy in such a personalized way, his feelings toward the other leader often shape the policy itself. His dislike for Zelensky, for instance, clearly affected his stance on the Russian-Ukraine war. From that angle, this was a success for Korea. But the summit fell short of the main goals. After Trump's tariff measures, Seoul and Washington did reach an agreement on July 30, but major gaps remained on Korean investment in the United States, on opening Korean markets, and on the defense cost sharing, etc. This meeting should have tied up some of those loose ends, especially on both sides, called the modernization of the alliance, but that consensus didn't come. So we should expect some very tough negotiation ahead. Not the expert, but as a professor, if I had to give this summit a grade, I would say incomplete.
Right. Professor Park, during the press availability session at the White House, Mr. Trump floated the idea of securing ownership of the South Korean land that houses the U.S. military base here in the country. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, is this a feasible request, do you think?
Well, it seems President Trump was either mistaken or perhaps he was making very calculated move. First of all, his claim that the United States leased its base in Korea is simply wrong. Under the status of first agreement, or SOFA, the land used by U.S. forces in Korea is provided free of charge by the Korean government. There is no rent, no lease payment at all. Article 2 of SOFA clearly states that the United States is granted the use of facilities and areas in Korea under the Mutual Defense Treaty. So when President Trump said, quote, "We want to end the lease and see if we can own the land where our big bases are," it doesn't hold up because there is no lease to begin with. My guess, is that he may have confused a little bit about this with Japan. I mean, in Japan, the cost of land, the rent, is calculated into Tokyo's defense contributions. If Trump truly wants ownership of the bases, that would be the kind of self-defeating. Today, the United States forces Korea pursue what Washington calls strategic flexibility. That means Korea takes the lead in defending its own territory, while the United States forces are used mainly to check to China and operate beyond the peninsula. But if the United States actually owned the bases as American soil, then Washington would be directly responsible for the defending them. That would tie America down more tightly to Korea. So from the Seoul's point of view, that would not be a bad thing. It would make the U.S. troops an even stronger tripwire, which Americans don't like this word, but meaning America would automatically be involved in any conflict that breaks out here.
Right, Professor Park, thank you for clarifying that. And also, of course, another misleading claim, if you will, by Mr. Trump during the summit was the fact that he claimed there were 40,000 troops here in Korea, South American troops, that is. Essentially, there are 28,500 troops, of course, Stephen, I'm sure you're aware. Stephen, speaking as a staff member of the Japanese weekly news magazine Nikkei Asia, what has been the response in neighboring Japan with regard to the summit between the South Korean and U.S. leaders?
Okay, well, in my answer to that, I would just talk first about the summit between Xi Jinping and Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba. I was in Tokyo to cover that over the weekend, and so I can kind of relay what I thought the reaction was in Japan at the time, and I think it was a kind of a lot of positive feelings because, again, just to frame this in the context of expectations, I think a lot of people in Japan had the expectations or a little bit of nervousness about Lee as previously a quite vocal member of South Korea's progressive camp, which has customarily been quite hard on Japan. Lee himself, I mean, as I was covering this, I went through the archives of Lee Jae-myung's comments on Japan. A lot of them are really quite strident. You know, he was very critical of his predecessor Yoon Suk-yeol's attempts to engage with Japan, and he has long been a proponent of this idea that cooperation with Japan ought to depend on new shows of remorse and things of that nature. But at least for the time being, he's taken a different tack. And while he was in Japan, him and Ishiba put out a joint statement at the end of or I'm not sure if statement is the right word, but a press release, kind of document. The first, I believe, was like the first written document that had come out of a Japan and Korea summit in something like 17 or 18 years. And it did not contain a lot of mentions of those types of issues, those types of thorny historical issues that have kind of plagued relations between the two sides for a very long time. And so I think that sort of, a lot of people in Japan took that as somewhat pleasantly surprising, and that created some optimism that the two sides would be able to work together on a level that most people in Japan probably didn't expect. And then seeing Lee then go on to Washington, I guess the question from the Japanese perspective was what this might mean for the prospects of trilateral cooperation between the three countries. Would Lee want to continue that? Would Lee see that as a kind of hindrance to executing his own foreign policy vision? And again, I think the general view in Japan, if you are someone who is in favor of this kind of trilateral cooperation, a mix of relief and pleasant surprise. I think Lee, in both of these kind of like major, his bilateral diplomatic debuts abroad, this two-country trip that he just embarked on, I think it's created some positive energy, but I still think that there's a lot of details yet to be worked out. I wouldn't, as Professor Park alluded, I might be a little bit more generous in my grading. I might say a B, but I would follow up with notes that there are some things that need to be added, some things that need to be worked out, some more specific steps to be taken.
Right. So while you give the summit a B, I believe Professor Park gave it an incomplete evaluation. Stephen, while President Xi Jinping advanced his agendas in neighboring Japan and over in the U.S., he sent a special delegation to neighboring China. That being said, what has been the response from China with regard to the summit between the South Korean and U.S. leaders?
Well, I'm not aware of any kind of official response from China. I mean, I don't think that like Xi Jinping or the Chinese state media has said much that I'm aware of. I mean, that there's been coverage in foreign media kind of analyzing how China hangs over these other engagements. As you know, China has just become such an important, strategically and economically such an important country, and smaller countries like South Korea are often described as kind of having to choose between loyalty to and engagement with the United States or with China, and being kind of caught in between them. China did come up in the engagement between Lee and Trump in a way that was kind of funny. I believe the idea of traveling to China, somebody mentioned that, and Trump kind of alluded, well, why don't we go there together? We'll ride in the same plane. We'll save greenhouse gases and do something good for the ozone. That's kind of encouraging in a way that they're able to speak about this openly in a kind of a non-ominous or not too serious way. But Lee's going to have to make some decisions, which perhaps might come to the fore when the APEC summit is held here later this year. I believe that the South Korean side will be hoping that Xi Jinping does attend, and that Trump does attend, and that every kind of influential and an important world leader is here to give that event the gravitas that they want it to have, and have it be a real forum for important decisions to get made. But China is a tough book to read. I mean, people smarter than me spend their whole careers trying to parse exactly what's happening in the inner workings of that regime and what it all might mean for the rest of the world. So I'm sure China is watching quite closely what happens with Lee and how he engages with Japan and how he engages with Trump, and time will tell exactly how they will formulate their response to all of that.
Right. Professor Park, addressing an audience at a Washington think tank, President Lee Jae-myung also touched upon ties between Seoul and Beijing. What are your prospects, Professor, with regard to ties between South Korea and China under the Lee Jae-myung administration?
Okay, before I answer that question, if I have to give the grade right now, I will give a B+. It's not bad at all. Okay.
Right.
So one of the things that surprised me most in the summit came on the August 25th during the President's keynote speech at the think tank in Washington. He openly declared that Korea would abandon the old formula: security with the United States, economy with China. In Korea, we said 안미 경중. He said very clearly, we cannot take that position. We cannot act against the basic direction of the United States policy. And this is a very sharp break from what President Lee and Democratic Party used to say. In the past, Lee Jae-myung often stressed that it was the best to get along with both Washington and Beijing. People still remember his very famous saying, the so-called CSA remark, meaning Korea should avoid unnecessary entanglement of any conflict here in the Indo-Pacific. Before coming to Washington, he first went to Japan, as Steve mentioned, and met Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. There he signaled a future-oriented approach rather than being trapped by the past. He even promised not to overturn 2015 Comfort Woman deal or the third-party compensation agreement on wartime labor, despite opposition from his own supporters. This attitude is very different from the closed nationalistic tone that once shaped the Democratic Party, captured by former President Roh Moo-hyun's slogan, so what if we are anti-American, so what if we are anti-Japanese? To me, this shows that the Lee Jae-myung administration government means by pragmatic diplomacy. It is about staying out of ideology or dogma, and instead making very flexible choices based on the reality. And it could also help counter the mega camp's claim that Lee Jae-myung's government is somehow pro-China.
Right, I see. Stephen, despite the differences on perhaps tariffs and trade, the two leaders during their talks at the Oval Office on Monday appeared united with regard to easing tensions here on the Korean Peninsula by engaging North Korea. How is the foreign media framing these intentions?
I think some stories frame this as kind of like another area where Lee and Trump could have common ground in that they are both interested in the possibility of meeting with Kim Jong-un for very different reasons. We'll never really know what Trump's motivations were in trying to engage diplomatically with Kim Jong-un. We know that ultimately it didn't yield much. It all kind of ended with a sputter and with no lasting achievements. But I guess Trump just has bigger things going on in the U.S. and he's busy with a lot of other matters. So North Korea is not terribly high on his foreign policy priority list. But Lee comes at North Korea from a much different place. As I mentioned earlier, he's a longtime member of South Korea's Jinbo or left-leaning camp, for whom peaceful reunification of the peninsula is a long-standing goal. It's something that they believe in very strongly and that they have stuck to, even as public opinion in South Korea has kind of strayed from that as a major priority. And I think just when Lee talks about wanting to engage diplomatically with North Korea, he's speaking kind of from his heart. He's speaking from a kind of a muscle memory of this is just something that has been a part of who he is politically and personally for a very long time. But all of that having been said, at the present moment, there is not much reason to believe that any of that really matters, just because Trump and Lee can say whatever they want about wanting to meet with Kim or wanting to hold any kind of encounter with North Korea. We have no reason to believe that North Korea is interested in that. They've said over and over again, North Korean state media in comments attributed to Kim Yo-jong have been really quite harsh and quite dismissive about Lee's overtures. And we have every reason to believe right now that North Korea is really much more focused on its relationship with China and with Russia, and is just kind of has turned its attention toward those countries and away from the pursuit of sanctions relief or the pursuit of cooperation with the South. They seem to have drawn the conclusion that there just isn't much to gain there. So, I was not rapt, or I was not really surprised or really taken in by these comments by Lee and Trump, because of course they would say that at this juncture. I mean, it makes sense for them to kind of leave that possibility open, but I think the chances of that leading to the kind of engagements that we saw in 2019 or 2018 is very slim at the moment.
Right. And perhaps expanding on what Stephen has just said, Professor Park, given today in a statement carried by its state-run media, North Korea dismissed President Xi Jinping's calls for denuclearization, calling them delusional. That being said, what are your suggestions, Professor Park, with regard to coaxing North Korea back to the dialogue table?
Yeah, right. Just today, North Korea issued another statement and personally attacking President Xi Jinping by name. So I think right now it is very difficult, if not impossible, to imagine any kind of a North-South Korea's meaningful relations in the short term, at least. So we have to remember back in 2019 December at the 5th plenum of the 7th Party Central Committee, Pyongyang announced its so-called frontal breakthrough strategy. At that point, North Korea declared they would no longer seek any kind of a meaningful ties with the South. And in December 2023, at the 9th plenum of the 8th Central Committee, North Korea went even further. They adopted a new line, that is strategic direction, treating South Korea not as the same people, but as a hostile state and enemy. Unless this kind of a strategic direction and line changes, Pyongyang will simply refuse any real contact with Seoul. In fact, Kim Yo-jong has repeated this position 3 times in just the past month. So this is why close cooperation with the United States is now more important than ever for South Korea. North Korea, meanwhile, is being careful not to provoke President Trump while leaving the door open for dialogue. But they want arms control talks, not the denuclearization talks at all. If U.S.-North Korea dialogue does take place, Seoul will need to work hand in hand with Washington and try to use that opening to explore a breakthrough in inter-Korean relations. For now, neither Seoul nor Washington has released an official policy or a strategy toward Pyongyang yet. So I suggest that it is important to have both countries to come together and then coordinate and come up with a shared strategy with the same goals and the same methods.
All right, before seeking to engage North Korea again then. All right, Professor Park, as always, thank you so much for your insights today.
Thank you very much.
And Stephen here in the studio, thank you very much for your time and thoughts.
Thank you.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. We return same time tomorrow, that is Thursday, with more panel discussion on the recent summit between Seoul and Washington.
천년을 이어온 우리의 지혜가 제천에서 다시 태어났어. 세대를 관통한 선조들의 건강 빅데이터. 빅데이터. 우리의 삶과 들에서 자란 천연물은 단순한 재료가 아니야. K 내추럴.